Hey, welcome back. I'm your host, Alyece Smith, founder of Socially Awesome, your favorite neurodivergent business coach. And if you're new here, welcome. You found your people. But today I want to talk about Mel Robbins and the Stanford researcher named Dr. Stacy Sims, who has 107 peer reviewed studies on women's exercise, physiology, and nutrition. Okay. And I'll link the episode that I'm referencing in the chat for you, but it absolutely broke the internet and for a good reason. But I still have some things to add. I don't know who I am thinking I can add things to Mel Robbins, but here we are.
Yo. Yo. Yes.
Yo, it's Alyece, say it right, no cap. ADHD CEO, yeah, we run this track. Systems that slap, brains built different. We make sales in our sleep, yeah, the hustle's efficient. This ain't fluff, nah, this is strategy raw for the ADHD. Minds breaking every law. Hit subscribe, don't miss a single show. We're running on dopamine, let's go. Let's go.
So let's talk about what Mel and Dr. Sims actually said. I want to give them credit because the core message of that episode, and I want you to really hear this because it's important. Dr. Stacy Sims, she's a Stanford faculty, exercise physiologist, researcher. She came on Mel's show and basically said that women have been gaslit by bro science for decades. And it's hilarious. And I loved it because I say that all the time. Like those of us that are in marketing have been gaslit by bro marketing. And they're not being dramatic, right? The research, the underpins most of the fitness and nutrition advice we've all been following, it was done on men and then just applied to women. And Dr. Sims calls it shrink and pink, which is funny. But let's take the men's version, make it smaller, slap some pink on it, and call it a women's product. And that's literally what has happened with fitness advice too. And I'm no fitness coach, all right? There was days back in the days, okay, where I was a gym rat, but here's some of what she broke down. And I'm telling you, when I heard this, my jaw was like on the floor. Fasted training, right? The whole wake up, skip breakfast, go work out, maximize fat burn thing. It doesn't work for women. And in fact, it works against us. Now, listening to this, I'm like, crap, because I usually don't do breakfast. I do skip breakfast. I love breakfast. I love breakfast food. I would much prefer breakfast food at night. I can't get motivated to eat that early. But Dr. Sims explains that the part of our brain that really regulates like stress and appetite and hormones, it's incredibly sensitive to blood sugar first thing in the morning. And so when you wake up, cortisol spikes. If you don't eat something to bring that cortisol down, your body doesn't burn that fat and it starts breaking down muscle. And it signals your body to hold on to belly fat. And I promise I'm getting to like how this actually applies to you because I do not want this to be some sort of like fat loss episode. But it's the thing we were told to do to help us lose weight. And it's literally doing the opposite in a woman's body. Now, for men, acid training works because their muscle fiber composition is different. And so their brain doesn't respond the same way to the missing fuel. And for us, we need something, even just a little something, before we move. So Dr. Sims calls this protein coffee. And she talks about just putting a scoop of protein powder in a cold brew or an espresso, make it the night before, 30 grams in a cup, takes 2 minutes. It can totally change everything. And she also breaks down why long cardio sessions aren't the move for women over 40 and why we actually need to move heavier weights with fewer reps as we age. Now, I'm not over 40 yet, but I'm glad I listened to this episode because I am creeping there. Why the 10 to 12 rep range that every trainer has ever been pushing in science since the 80s is working against us as our estrogen drops. And she really gets into like cold plunges and sauna and strength training and all of it. And it is a packed episode. So I highly recommend that you listen to it if you haven't. Again, the link's going to be in the show notes for you. But here's the part that really nagged at me and why I wanted to bring this to my audience. Okay. And Mel Robbins has traditionally talked a lot about ADHD. So I love her. I listen to her all the time. But Dr. Sims on this episode talks about, those changes that we have. And she talks about how the female brain is more sensitive to stress signals, blood sugar fluctuations, cortisol. The male brain is just different. And she talks about how women's bodies are in this constant feedback loop between hormones and fuel and the nervous system. And the whole time I'm listening to this, I'm thinking she's literally describing the ADHD brain. Except for us, it's not just hormones, it's also dopamine. It's also executive dysfunction. It's also rejection sensitivity. It's also emotional dysregulation and time blindness and a nervous system that is already operating on a hair trigger before we even wake up in the morning. And so Dr. Sims says in this episode, and this is the part that really got me here. She says that when women skip breakfast and go straight into exercise, the body reads it as a stress event. The brain really panics and it starts breaking down our muscle. It stores fat. It keeps cortisol elevated, which messes up your sleep, which messes up everything. And for an ADHD brain, that is happening on a whole other level because here's what's actually happening in a lot of our mornings. And again, medical disclaimer here, not a doctor, but I've done a ton of research. So, kind of like deductive reasoning here, we wake up already overwhelmed. You're already running through 17 things we forgot to do yesterday. We're already flooded. Okay. And if we haven't taken our medication yet, or if you're one of those people who prefers not to take medication, your executive function is basically offline. So the idea of doing something as simple as eating breakfast before we work out requires planning, it requires remembering, it requires not getting distracted and suddenly it's 11 a.m. Then there's where Dr. Sims talks about how the body needs consistent eating windows to regulate cortisol and support your circadian rhythm. And it's funny because I talk about this in my TEDx and I'll link that in the show notes too. But everyone's body has what I call spark times, but ultimately it comes back to your circadian rhythm. She said that when women who eat breakfast by 8 a.m. and stop eating after 6 get all this metabolic benefits of intermittent fasting without actually fasting. Women who hold off till noon get none of those benefits. And so I personally have traditionally noticed that I feel sluggish or I feel slower in the morning when I eat breakfast. Okay. So when I eat breakfast, I'm traditionally like, and I feel like it takes my brain so much longer to flip on. I usually eat lunch at like 1 or 2, but I tend to snack like all night long. And I can't stop wondering if that's why maybe sometimes I have trouble sleeping. Sometimes maybe my rhythm feels off. And so again, I challenge you to go listen to this episode. It was definitely worth the listen. But for most people, it's a schedule shift. And for an ADHD brain, this is like a systems design problem because time blindness for us is real. Hyperfocus is real. The thing where you forget to eat for 6 hours and then crash so hard you can't form a sentence, that's not laziness, that's neurology. And so the question isn't just what should women eat? The question is how do we actually build the eating structure that our brain will cooperate with? And so this is kind of exactly what the Flow First framework is built for, not as a diet, not as a workout plan, because Lord knows that it's not my jam, but as a systems approach to understanding how your specific brain and body work together and how designing your life around that instead of against it. And so the F in Flow actually stands for find your spark times. And Dr. Sims was circling around this idea without naming it the way I name it. Obviously, she's an expert in her field, so she has her own rhythm for those things. But she talked about how the women who get the best results are the ones who work with their body's natural rhythms, their hormonal cycles, their cortisol patterns, their energy windows. And for those of us with ADHD, that's even more critical because our spark times aren't just about energy. They're about when our dopamine is actually online, when our executive function is available, when our brain will cooperate with the hard things. And for most of us, those windows are real and they're predictable once you start to map them. And so the women I work with who make the biggest shifts aren't just the ones who get the best meal plan or hardest workout routine, because that is not what I do. Okay. I don't even, that's not even a prereq to work with me. All right. But they're the ones who figure out this is when my brain is ready to go hard. This is when I need to do something gentle. This is when I need to eat because if I don't eat now, in 2 hours, I'll be completely dysregulated. And so that is flow first thinking. It's not discipline, it's design. And Dr. Sims in that episode says, don't train like a man. And so I am saying, don't schedule like a neurotypical person. Both are the same message. Stop applying a template that was never built for you and start learning what actually works for your specific biology. All right. So if you've never listened to any of my episodes, I'm a very tactical person. And so I want you to actually walk away with a few things today. Number one, I'm going to try the protein coffee hack. It's funny because so many of these things that were in this episode, I used to do, okay? When I would get up, and a lot of these things I did when I was going to the gym very regularly, and I need to personal goals, okay? I need to get back to that. Ever since I had neck surgery, I almost have this fear of going back in the gym because there was a point about 6 months after my neck surgery where I started having pain again, and I was very fearful that I was going to damage something long term, and I will work on that with my doctors. But she talks about the protein coffee, okay, and just a scoop of powder, and I'm like, "You know what? Why not? Maybe introducing 30 grams of protein in the morning for me in my coffee will give me the benefits without making me feel that sluggish." And so, more importantly than the protein, for me, it's about the decision fatigue. And so I have very specific rhythms that I follow every day, very specific routines to eliminate the decision fatigue. And I'm like, that's great. That's the perfect way to eliminate decision fatigue in the morning for breakfast. You're not standing there in the kitchen trying to figure out what you're going to eat while you're already overwhelmed. It's just there. And that is working with your brain. Okay. I have added some protein powder to my Walmart order for today. I'm going to start putting that. Maybe that will help me with, again, getting my brain going faster. I love that. I love that. Number 2, she talks about your eating window is your energy system. And so for me, your body has to be in this stress state the entire time, a lot of times if you skip meals. And I do see this in ADHD people because we get in that hyper focus, especially if you're like me and your spark times are in the morning, you don't want to stop and eat. Right. And so for ADHD brains, that means, your cortisol has been elevated, your dopamine's already depleted, you're trying to run your business and your life from a deficit. So Dr. Sims calls this front loading your calories. And it's kind of what I call protecting your spark time, right? So the more stable your blood sugar is in the morning, the more available your brain is for the work that matters. And so my takeaway on this is she talks about your eating window is your energy system. For me, protecting that energy window, right? Protecting those spark times. And so obviously I talk about this in the book, Flow First Thinking, but making sure that your body is in the best physical state it can be during those spark times is just as important. Okay. And number 3, if any of this feels impossible, that's information. If you're listening to me right now and you're like, I know I should eat breakfast, I know I should move my body more, but I literally cannot make myself do it consistently, that is your brain telling you that the system you're using doesn't work. Not that you're broken, the system is wrong. And that's exactly, again, why I designed Flow First Thinking to help you fix that. If you want the full framework, definitely grab the book. I'll have it in the show notes for you, but it's so important because it's not just a book. It is the book I wish I had 10 years ago. All right. It's not a productivity hack book. It's a permission book, permission to finally build your life and your business around the brain you actually have. So again, definitely plug into Mel's episode. There is a reason it is the most shared episode of 2025. And that's a wrap on this episode for today. And let me know or shoot me a DM on IG at socially.awesome. Let me know what you thought of Mel's episode. But if this episode of the ADHD CEO resonated with you, please share it. Please leave it a review. It is the best compliment you can give. Take a screenshot of you listening to this, throw it in your stories, and tag me at socially.awesome. Your ADHD isn't broken. It is untapped. With that being said, make it simple, make it social, and make it awesome.